If you're over 60, and at some point this morning you poured milk into your coffee, your tea, your cereal, or a smoothie, give me the next 90 seconds. Because there's something about that glass of milk that almost nobody over 60 has ever been told. And it has a direct line to that stubborn morning blood sugar number that doesn't seem to move no matter how careful you are at lunch and dinner. And here's why that matters more than it sounds like it should. What your blood sugar does in that first hour or two after breakfast, it doesn't just decide how you feel by 10 o'clock. It's part of the same pattern your doctor is measuring every time they check your numbers. The same pattern that, over years, is tied to the things people worry about most with diabetes. Your eyes, your nerves, your kidneys, your heart. One morning doesn't decide any of that, but mornings repeated for years quietly do. There's one specific word you can look for on your milk carton tonight that changes everything. And there's a 15-second habit, something you do before you eat, not instead of anything, that researchers have tested again and again with exactly this kind of morning routine in mind. I'm going to walk you through both of those today, along with 3 other everyday milk habits that quietly work against people over 60 without anyone ever noticing. And I'm saving the most surprising one for last because it's not really about milk at all. It's about timing. Stay with me. 1 word, 1 habit, 5 milk mistakes. Hi, welcome back. If this is your first time here, this channel is built around one idea: that the small, ordinary choices in your daily routine, the ones that feel too boring to matter, are usually where the real change happens, not dramatic overhauls, small swaps you barely notice after a week. Today it's milk, and I want to say up front, milk is not the villain here. This isn't a video telling you to throw it out. It's a video about something much more useful, understanding what's actually in the glass, so you can make the choice that's right for you, on purpose, instead of by habit. Before we go further, drop a comment and tell me, what milk do you use? Be honest, most people haven't, and that's why this video exists. Okay, let's get into the 5 habits, starting with the one that surprises people because it has nothing to do with anything being added to your milk at all. What milk do you use most, and have you ever flipped the carton over? Habit number 1, forgetting that plain milk already comes with sugar built in. Here's what I mean. When most people think about cutting sugar from their diet, they think about the obvious things: soda, dessert, that second cookie after dinner. They're vigilant about those, and milk doesn't even make the list. Because milk doesn't taste sweet, it doesn't come in a brightly colored package promising a treat, and it's been part of breakfast for as long as most of us can remember. It feels like the opposite of a problem food. But here's the thing, your body knows that the front of the carton doesn't mention. Milk contains a natural sugar called lactose. A standard cup of regular cow's milk has around 12 grams of it, 12 grams of carbohydrate, sitting quietly in something that doesn't taste like sugar at all. Because lactose isn't especially sweet on the tongue the way table sugar is. To put that in perspective, 12 grams of carbohydrate is roughly what you'd get from a slice of bread. If you've ever used a diabetes exchange list or talked to a dietitian about carb counting, you'll actually find milk listed right there alongside bread, rice, and fruit in the carbohydrate column. Not in some separate protein or dairy category that doesn't count. It counts. It's just easy to forget that it counts because nobody serves you a carb, they serve you milk. Now here's where it adds up. Picture someone like Carol, 66. Carol doesn't drink soda. She's cut back on sweets. She feels like she's doing everything right. But her morning looks like this: a splash of milk in her coffee when she wakes up, a half cup over her cereal 20 minutes later, maybe another splash in a second cup of coffee mid-morning. None of those feel like eating to Carol. They're just milk. But add those splashes and half cups together, and by the time she's finished her morning routine, she's quietly taken in somewhere around 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrate from milk alone. Before she's eaten a single bite of toast, oatmeal, or fruit. That's not a small number. That's close to what's in an entire slice or two of bread, arriving on top of everything else on her plate. This is exactly the kind of thing that shows up as, I don't understand why my number is higher than it should be. I didn't even eat much. The milk wasn't much, but it wasn't nothing either. Now hold on to something for a second because I'm going to come back to it later and it'll make a lot more sense once we get there. Milk also brings protein to the table. That's actually going to become really important in a few minutes, not as a way to cancel out the lactose, but as part of the actual fix this whole video is building toward. For now, just file that away. Carbohydrate and protein, both coming from the same glass, doing 2 very different jobs. There's one more wrinkle worth knowing, especially after 60. The enzyme your body uses to break down lactose, it's called lactase, tends to become less active as we get older, for a lot of people, even if it was never an issue earlier in life. That's part of why some people find that dairy seems to sit differently than it used to, even when nothing else about their diet has changed. It doesn't mean dairy is suddenly off limits, but it's another reason that paying a little more attention to how much milk you're taking in and how your body responds to it can be more useful at 65 than it was at 35. Not because milk changed, but because your body's relationship with it can shift quietly over time. I want to be really clear about what I am, and I'm not saying here. I am not saying cow's milk is dangerous, or that you need to cut it out. For a lot of people, a cup of milk with breakfast is a perfectly fine part of a balanced morning, especially because milk also brings real protein and calcium to the table. and we'll come back to why that protein matters in a big way later in this video. What I'm saying is this: if you're someone who's tracking carbohydrates or someone whose morning numbers run a little higher than you'd expect, milk is one of the most common things that gets left off the mental list. Not because it's hidden, because it's familiar. And familiar things are the easiest things to stop seeing. So here's the first small action, and it costs you nothing. Tonight, when you make your evening tea or get the milk out for tomorrow, just take 30 seconds and add up, roughly, how many times you use milk across a typical day and how much each time. You don't need to be precise, you just need to know the number exists. Awareness is the whole first step. The changes come later. Now, once people realize that even plain milk carries some carbohydrate, a lot of them have the exact same instinct and reach for the exact same fix. And that fix is where habit number 2 comes in, because it can quietly make things worse instead of better. Here's why. Habit number 2, assuming plant-based automatically means low sugar. So let's say someone watches a video like this one or talks to their doctor and hears milk has natural sugar in it. The very next thing a lot of people do is head to the store and grab a plant-based milk instead. Almond, oat, soy, coconut, whatever's on the shelf at eye level. This habit of reaching for the alternative without checking can be a hidden trap. And that instinct isn't unreasonable. The problem isn't the plant. The problem is what often happens to that plant milk before it gets into the carton. Here's what I mean. Walk down the milk aisle and look at the cartons. A lot of them say things like original or just the name of the plant with no other description. Almond milk, oat milk, soy milk. What a lot of people don't realize is that original very often means sweetened. Manufacturers add sugar to make the plain version of the plant taste more like what people expect milk to taste like. A little creamy, a little sweet. Depending on the brand, that added sugar can run anywhere from around 5 grams up to 10 or more grams per cup, on top of whatever carbohydrate the plant itself naturally contains. So now you've got someone who switched away from cow's milk specifically because of the natural sugar in it, and they've landed on a product that has added sugar on top of its own natural carbohydrate. And they have no idea, because the front of the carton looks exactly like the healthy choice they were picturing. Picture Walter. He heard plant-based was better, so he switched to oat milk. But Walter didn't do what most people forget. He didn't turn the carton around. If he had, he'd have seen cane sugar listed right there. Added sugar, stacked on top of the natural carbs. He was just doing what the packaging intended, feeling good without checking. Now pay attention. I'm about to share the one word that changes how you'll read labels forever. Once you know it, you'll notice it on every carton for the rest of your life. Picture someone like Walter, 71. Walter heard that plant-based was the way to go, so he switched his whole household over to oat milk. He felt good about it. Better for his heart, better for the planet, all the things he'd heard. What Walter didn't do, because almost nobody does this without being told to, was turn the carton around. If he had, he'd have seen that his original oat milk had several grams of added sugar per cup, sitting right there on the ingredients list as cane sugar, stacked on top of the natural carbohydrate that comes from the oats themselves. Walter wasn't doing anything wrong. He was doing exactly what the front of the package was designed to make him do. Feel good about a choice without checking it. Okay, pay close attention right here, because this next part is the thing I promised you at the very start of this video. Remember the one word I said would change everything? This is it. Don't skip ahead. It only takes about 10 seconds to explain, but it's the kind of thing that, once you know it, you'll notice on every single carton for the rest of your life. If you've got a plant-based milk in there, look at the front of the carton. Does it say unsweetened anywhere on it? If it doesn't, and it doesn't say no added sugar either, there's a good chance it's the sweetened version, sitting right next to its unsweetened twin on the same shelf at the store, usually for the exact same price. Okay, word found or word not found, either way come back, because here's where it gets genuinely interesting, even for people who already know to look for unsweetened. Habit number 3, assuming all unsweetened milks are roughly the same. This is the one that surprises people who've already done their homework, the ones who learned the word unsweetened and started buying it faithfully. Because here's the truth, unsweetened just means no sugar was added during manufacturing. It says nothing about how much carbohydrate was already there to begin with, based purely on what the milk is made from. Think about it this way. Almond milk is made by blending a small amount of almonds with a large amount of water, then straining most of the solids back out. What's left is, by weight, mostly water. Almonds themselves are low in carbohydrate, so the milk ends up with barely any, often 1 to 2 grams per cup. Now compare that to oat milk. Oats are a grain. Grains by definition are mostly carbohydrate. That's what makes them a grain in the first place. When oats are processed into a milk, that carbohydrate doesn't disappear. It stays right there in the liquid. So even an unsweetened oat milk can carry around 15 or 16 grams of carbohydrate per cup just from the oats themselves. That's a significant difference. That's more carbohydrate than you'd get from a cup of regular cow's milk, and it earned the word unsweetened fair and square because nothing extra was added. The oats just naturally bring that much carbohydrate to the table on their own. And I want you to sit with that. If you've been buying oat milk because it's been marketed so heavily as the safe, healthy option, this might be the moment to go check your fridge again. I'll wait. Okay, now here's where it gets even more specific, because oat milk isn't even the highest carbohydrate option on the shelf. Rice milk tends to land in a similar place, for the same basic reason. Rice, like oats, is a carbohydrate-dense grain, and that carbohydrate carries over into the milk made from it, sweetened or not. There's another way to look at this beyond just the carbohydrate number on the label, and that's how quickly that carbohydrate tends to raise blood sugar, what's sometimes called the glycemic index. When researchers have ranked common milk alternatives this way, rice milk consistently lands toward the higher end among the faster, sharper risers, while almond milk barely registers at all, simply because there's so little carbohydrate there to begin with. Oat milk tends to sit somewhere in the middle to upper range, depending on the brand and how it's processed. This lines up with what we just covered about carbohydrate content, but it's worth knowing it's not just about how much carbohydrate is there. It's also about how quickly your body turns it into blood sugar once it arrives. Soy milk is the interesting middle case, and one of the only plant milks that's genuinely different in kind, not just in degree. Soy milk is made from whole soybeans, and soybeans are unusual because they're relatively high in protein and relatively low in carbohydrate. Unsweetened soy milk is lower in carbs than oat or rice milk, often just 3 to 4 grams per cup, while providing 7 to 8 grams of protein similar to cow's milk. That protein number is a big piece of the puzzle. Picture Diane. She has 2 cartons in her fridge, an unsweetened oat milk and an unsweetened almond milk. Both say unsweetened and have 0 added sugar. But if Diane compared the labels, she'd see one has roughly 15 times the carbohydrate of the other. Not because of additives, but simply because of what each milk is made from. That's the part almost nobody explains. Unsweetened tells you what wasn't added. It doesn't tell you what was always there. Now, I know exactly what a lot of you are thinking right now. Okay, so just buy the almond milk or the soy milk and move on. And honestly, that's a completely reasonable plan. And if that's all you take from this video, it's a genuinely useful change. But here's the part that most videos on this topic never get to, and it's the part I think actually matters most. Which milk you choose is the smaller half of this conversation. The bigger half is something you do, not something you buy, and we're getting there very soon. But first, quick comment check. When's the last time you actually stood in the aisle and compared 2 labels side by side instead of grabbing the one you always grab? Be honest in the comments. No judgment. Almost nobody does this, which is exactly why it's worth doing once. Habit number 4, overlooking protein as part of the picture, and overlooking fermented options entirely. We're about halfway through, so let me be upfront with you for a second. Everything so far has been about what's in the carton. The thing I promised you at the very start of this video, the timing trick. The one I said wasn't really about milk at all. That's still ahead. So if you've made it this far, stick with me for just a few more minutes, because the next section is what sets that up. And then we get to the part most people tell me they didn't expect. So let's say you've landed on unsweetened soy milk because of that protein number we just talked about. 7 or 8 grams per cup, low carbohydrate, the closest plant-based match to cow's milk in terms of overall nutrition. Why does that protein number actually matter for blood sugar specifically? Here's the short version, and we're going to go much deeper on this in the next section, so I just want to plant the idea here. Protein slows things down. When you eat or drink something that contains protein alongside something that contains carbohydrate, the protein slows how quickly that carbohydrate gets digested and absorbed into your bloodstream. Slower absorption tends to mean a gentler rise in blood sugar afterward, instead of a sharp spike followed by a crash. Unsweetened almond milk, by contrast, is wonderful for its low carbohydrate content, but it brings almost nothing to the table in terms of protein, typically less than 1 gram per cup. That doesn't make it a bad choice. It just means that if almond milk is your main milk, the protein in your meal needs to come from somewhere else. Eggs, nuts, yogurt, whatever works for you. Almond milk is a great low carbohydrate base. It's just not doing the protein job, and it was never designed to. Before I get to that third category, and this one genuinely surprises people because almost nobody talks about it in the same conversation as milk for blood sugar, I want you to think back to whether you've ever had a glass of plain kefir or even know what it is. Now, there's a third category I want to mention because it gets skipped over constantly in these conversations, and it's worth knowing about even if it's not for everyone: fermented dairy. Plain kefir and plain unsweetened yogurt that you can drink or eat with a spoon. Fermentation means live bacterial cultures have already gone to work on some of the natural sugar in the milk before it ever reaches you, quite literally consuming some of that lactose we talked about earlier as part of the fermentation process. What's left tends to be gentler, both on blood sugar and, for a lot of people, on digestion. And those same live cultures go on to interact with your own gut bacteria after you eat them, which is an area of research that's gotten a lot of attention over the last decade. Several large, long-running studies that have followed groups of adults over many years have found that people who regularly eat plain yogurt tend to have a lower likelihood of developing type 2 diabetes over time compared to those who don't. Though, like most nutrition research, this comes from observing people's habits over years, rather than a quick before and after experiment. So it's one piece of a bigger picture, not a guarantee for any one person. Picture someone like Frank, 70. Frank is the first to tell you he's not a health food guy. He's tried a few trendy swaps over the years that ended up sitting in the back of the fridge until they expired, and he was fully prepared for Kefir to be one more of those. He'd always done fine with regular dairy. No issues, never been a problem. He just swapped his usual afternoon glass of milk for a small cup of plain unsweetened Kefir instead. Same time of day, same chair, same routine, just a different cup. A few weeks in, what actually surprised him wasn't anything dramatic. It was that it just stuck. No willpower involved, nothing to remember. He says it sits a little easier with him, and honestly, the fact that it never felt like doing something for his health is probably exactly why it's still part of his routine months later. The word plain matters here just as much as unsweetened mattered earlier. Flavored Kefir and flavored yogurt, the ones with fruit on the bottom, or vanilla, or anything described as a smoothie, can carry just as much added sugar as the sweetened plant milks we talked about earlier. Same rule applies. Turn it around, read the label, look for the word. So here's where we are. If blood sugar is genuinely your main concern, unsweetened soy milk currently has a slight edge. Mostly because of that protein number. Unsweetened almond milk is excellent for keeping carbohydrate low, especially if you're getting protein elsewhere, and plain unsweetened kefir or yogurt is a solid option. If dairy has always agreed with you, and you'd rather not switch to a plant-based product at all. But, and this is the open loop I promise to close, even if you do absolutely nothing else from this video except keep drinking whatever milk you already drink, there is one more thing, and it might matter more than all of the choices we've covered so far combined. Before we get to that, I want to take just a minute on something that ties this whole video together, because it's the reason any of this matters more at 60 or 70 than it did at 30. As we get older, it's extremely common, not universal, but common, for the body to become a little less efficient at handling carbohydrate. Part of that comes down to muscle. Your muscles are actually one of the biggest storage tanks your body has for glucose. After a meal, a large share of the sugar from your food gets pulled out of your bloodstream and stored in muscle tissue, ready to be used as fuel later. That's a normal, healthy process. But starting somewhere around our 40s and 50s and continuing from there, most people gradually lose some muscle mass over time if nothing is actively done to maintain it, a process that's sometimes called sarcopenia. Less muscle means a smaller storage tank. And a smaller storage tank means that the same amount of carbohydrate in a meal has fewer places to go, which can translate into a higher, longer-lasting rise in blood sugar than that same meal would have caused 20 years earlier, even if your diet hasn't actually changed at all. Protein is vital for maintaining and rebuilding muscle. That's why it's a central theme in our discussion. Choosing protein-rich milks like soy or kefir or using a protein preload helps manage blood sugar effectively. You're supporting the muscle tissue that regulates your blood sugar. These two are deeply connected. It's natural biology, and a small, low-effort change in your 60s can make a massive difference. Your body was handling this easily at 30, but now it's quietly asking for a little more help. You're not fighting your body, you're giving it the support it needs to thrive. What goes into your stomach first, and how your stomach and gut respond to that first thing, actually shapes how everything that follows gets handled, including how quickly the carbohydrate in your meal turns into blood sugar. Protein specifically does something useful here. When protein arrives in your stomach a little bit ahead of carbohydrate, even just 10 or 15 minutes ahead, a couple of things happen. First, it tends to slow down how quickly your stomach empties its contents into your small intestine, which is where most carbohydrate absorption actually happens. Second, protein triggers some of your body's own hormone signals that are involved in regulating insulin, essentially giving your body an earlier heads up that food is on its way, so it can respond a bit more smoothly instead of being caught off guard by a sudden wave of carbohydrate all at once. Researchers call this a protein preload, and it's been studied specifically using milk and other protein-containing drinks, given before meals that are higher in carbohydrate, the kind of breakfast a lot of us actually eat, like toast, cereal, or oatmeal. And across these studies, the pattern that keeps showing up is the same. When people have a small amount of protein before their carbohydrate-containing meal, their blood sugar afterward tends to rise more gradually and to a lower peak, compared to eating the exact same meal without that head start. 10 to 15 minutes, one small glass, that's it. Now, I know that might sound almost too simple. 10 minutes, a small glass, that's really it? I had pretty much the same reaction the first time I came across this. So let me give you the honest version, including where the limits are, rather than the dramatic one. I want to be careful about how I describe this, because I don't want to oversell it. This isn't a cure, and it isn't going to undo a meal that's genuinely high in refined carbohydrate. What it appears to do, based on the research, is take some of the edge off the spike that follows a typical meal, making the rise gentler and the peak a bit lower for the same food. Think of it less like a brake pedal slam down, and more like easing off the gas a little earlier than you normally would so the whole ride is smoother. Here's what makes this so practical. You're not removing anything. You're not restricting anything. You're not even necessarily changing your milk if you don't want to. You're just moving a small amount of protein earlier in your routine by about 10 to 15 minutes. In practice, that looks like this: a small glass, somewhere around half a cup to a cup, of an unsweetened, protein-containing milk, like the unsweetened soy milk we talked about, or a lactose-free or higher protein dairy milk if that's what works for you, had on its own, about 10 to 15 minutes before you sit down to your usual breakfast. Then you eat your usual breakfast exactly as you normally would. Same toast, same oatmeal, same cereal, nothing different there at all. Having it alongside your meal instead of slightly before still tends to help somewhat, but giving it that small head start seems to be where the research shows the clearest effect. Picture someone like Eleanor, 73. Eleanor's breakfast has been the same for years: a slice of whole grain toast and a small bowl of oatmeal. She didn't change a single thing about that. What she added was a small glass of unsweetened soy milk on its own about 10 minutes before she sits down to eat, while she's setting the table, or while the kettle's going. That's the entire change. Same toast, same oatmeal, same kitchen, same routine. Just one small glass, 10 minutes earlier than everything else. Now here's why I saved this one for last, and why I called it the one that's not really about milk. Notice that this idea doesn't actually depend on which milk you've chosen from everything else we talked about today. It works alongside any of it. If you've already switched to unsweetened almond milk for your coffee, great, that's still a good choice, and this works on top of it. If you're still drinking regular cow's milk and you're not ready to change that yet, that's fine too. This still works on top of it. This is the one piece that doesn't ask you to give anything up. It just asks you to add 10 minutes and a small glass to a routine you already have. That's also why I think it's the one most worth trying first, even before any of the swaps we talked about earlier. It's the lowest effort, lowest cost, fastest to test change in this entire video. And because it's something you can notice in how you feel an hour or two after breakfast, and whether that mid-morning slump shows up or not, it gives you feedback quickly, which makes it a lot easier to stick with than a change you're just supposed to trust will help eventually. So now you've got both pieces I promised you at the very beginning: the word unsweetened and the timing habit, a small protein-containing drink 10 to 15 minutes ahead of your biggest meal. Let's put it all together into something you can actually start with tomorrow. Here's how I'd put this into practice, broken into 3 steps, none of which require you to overhaul anything tonight. Step 1, tonight or next time you're in the kitchen, just look. Pull out whatever milk you currently use most, turn it around. Check the front for the word unsweetened, and check the nutrition label for total carbohydrate per serving and added sugar per serving. Here's a quick way to scan it in under 30 seconds if you've never done it before. Ignore the front of the package entirely. Pictures and words like natural, original, and farm fresh are marketing, not nutrition information. Flip to the panel on the back or side. Find total carbohydrate and added sugars, both listed per serving, and double check the serving size, because some labels use a smaller serving than you'd actually pour, which can make the numbers look better than they are. That's really it. 2 numbers, 1 serving size, 30 seconds, and you'll know more about what's in that carton than most people ever bother to find out. You don't have to change anything yet. Just look, and now you know what you're actually starting from. Step 2. This week, if you want to make a swap, if what you found was a sweetened version of something, the easiest first move is simply switching to the unsweetened version of that exact same product. Same brand, same shelf, usually the same price, right next to each other. If you want to go a step further and you're comfortable with soy, unsweetened soy milk gives you that extra protein advantage we talked about. If soy isn't for you, unsweetened almond milk is a great low carbohydrate base. Just remember to get your protein from elsewhere in the meal. And if dairy has always agreed with you, plain unsweetened kefir or yogurt is worth a try too. Steps 1 and 2 are both about what's in the glass. Step 3 is different. And if you only do one thing from this entire video, this is the one most worth doing, because it's the step that doesn't cost you anything and doesn't ask you to give anything up. Step 3. Starting tomorrow morning, try the timing habit for 2 weeks. A small glass of an unsweetened, protein-containing milk about 10 to 15 minutes before your usual breakfast. With breakfast itself unchanged, if you check your blood sugar at home as part of your routine, this is a great thing to simply note for 2 weeks. Not to obsess over, just to notice. Does the late morning dip feel any different? Does the number an hour or two after breakfast look any different than what you're used to? 2 weeks is enough to get a feel for it without it becoming a project. A couple of honest notes before we wrap up. Everyone's body is a little different, and that's not a disclaimer to brush past. It's actually the whole point of trying this for yourself rather than just taking my word for it. And if you're managing kidney concerns alongside blood sugar, or you're on medications that affect how your body handles protein or potassium, it's worth running any of these changes past your doctor or dietitian first, just so they can factor it in alongside everything else they're already keeping an eye on for you. None of this is meant to replace the guidance you're already getting. It's meant to sit alongside it. Before you go, tell me in the comments which of these 3 steps you're going to try first: the label check, the swap, or the timing habit. And if you've already been doing one of these without realizing it had a name, let me know that too. I'd genuinely love to hear it. Let's do a really quick recap because I know that was a lot. Habit 1. Plain milk already carries natural sugar, lactose, and across a day, the small amounts add up more than people realize. Habit 2. Plant-based doesn't automatically mean low sugar. Look for the word unsweetened specifically, not original or natural. Habit 3. Even unsweetened milks vary a lot depending on what they're made from. Oat and rice tend to run higher in carbohydrate, almond and soy tend to run lower. Habit 4. If blood sugar is your focus, unsweetened soy milk's combination of low carbohydrate and real protein gives it a slight edge, with plain kefir or yogurt as a good option if dairy works for you. And habit 5, the one that ties everything together, is timing. A small protein-containing drink, 10 to 15 minutes before your biggest meal of the day, regardless of which milk you choose. If even one of these was new to you today, that's a win. That's one more thing you now understand about your own routine that you didn't an hour ago. And if you found this useful, hit subscribe. We do one practical, everyday topic like this every week. No extremes, nothing dramatic, just small things explained clearly so you can decide for yourself what's worth changing. One more time, drop your answer below. Which milk is in your fridge right now? And are you going to try the timing trick tomorrow morning? I read every comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves.